Hey folks, let's talk about what Black history now looks like under Trump and the authoritarians. At his Black History Month event at the White House yesterday, Trump didn't celebrate Black history. He just weaponized it, like he does everything else, twisting it into a tool to prop up the Patriot myth and erase the realities of Black struggle and resistance. And in doing all of that, he made a ridiculous statement, but one that we need to unpack because it gives us a window into what Black history is now, as far as they're concerned. Here it is. The last administration tried to reduce all of American history to a single year, 1619, but under our administration, we honor the indispensable role Black Americans have. I can't finish reading this. You guys can read this. Ugh. Trump is signaling, on behalf of his allies, what Black history now looks like under his assault on the truth. From every quarter. Black history will be permitted only when it serves white nationalist narratives and white nationalist priorities. It must affirm the righteousness of the founders and the patriot cause. Anything else, enslavement, resistance, Black loyalists, the expansion of slavery after the Revolution, the entrenchment of it in the Constitution, is too divisive to be acknowledged. But a little bit of a history lesson, an honest history lesson. Trump created the 1776 Commission, which is fueling a lot of this garbage, to crush the 1619 Project, because it exposed historical truths that threatened his movement's mythology. And the project, of course, as a lot of you know, led by the brilliant Nicole Hannah-Jones, laid out what academic and public historians have long recognized: slavery wasn't a footnote to the American story, but foundational to it. That, of course, sent Trump into a tizzy. So he demanded a state-run counter-narrative, branding the 1619 Project as toxic propaganda. 1619 Project is toxic propaganda. And pushing schools to indoctrinate students in patriotic education. Now, the result of all of that, of the 1776 Commission, was the 1776 Report, which my Patreon community's read. We're going to read it for my class this summer. It's a clumsy bit of Patriot fan fiction that is serious only in its toxicity. It's cancerous. It poses this fantasy of American history that erases systemic racism, downplays slavery, and recasts the American story as a march of noble white men striving towards perfection. You are dumber after reading it than you were at the beginning. You know less about American history at the end than you did before you read it. That's how bad it is. So, in the end, though, it's a political document. A lot of dumb stuff goes into political documents, designed to turn history into propaganda. And here's specifically what the 1776 report does. Let's bring some receipts here. It pretends the founders were reluctant slaveholders, forced into an unfortunate compromise, ignoring their active role in enshrining slavery in law and policy, requiring a whole war to go actually dismantle it. And it ignores two of the few things that actually united the founders. They all agreed that slavery was wrong, and they all refused to do anything about it. The report also claims that slavery was an aberration, rather than central to the economy, society, politics, and it frames all of American history as an uninterrupted struggle towards justice, ignoring deliberate, centuries-long entrenchment of racial oppression. The 1776 Commission is not about education. It's about message control. It's about a master narrative. It's an attempt to erase the past to justify oppression in the present. And Trump, of course, has now reinstated it. He did it on day one, explicitly linking it to Task Force 250, which will oversee America's 250th anniversary celebrations next year. So now let's talk about how the 1776 Commission rewrites Black history. Now, the goal of the 1776 Commission is to subordinate Black history to white nationalism. It's that simple. This is how the state-controlled version of Black history looks. Black figures must be reduced to supporting characters in the myth of 1776. Phyllis Wheatley and Elizabeth Freeman can be included only if they are framed as affirming in some way the Patriot cause, as long as they are framed in some way as putting the Patriot cause into a positive light. Out-of-context founder quotes will be deployed at will to suggest the founders were anti-slavery heroes, that they were reluctant enslavers, which erases their active role in preserving, expanding, and profiting from slavery. This is something that floods Black History Month feeds on Instagrams. Go take a look right now as an object lesson at almost any heritage site preparing to comply. You will find all of them doing this. But they ignore that, because you have to ignore the realities of Black life in the immortal cause of 1776. You have to erase them. That 20% of the American population was enslaved. That the vast majority of free and enslaved Black people who had a choice sided with the British. And that the Patriot government enshrined slavery and worked actively to prevent Black people from gaining freedom. This is not just historical distortion. It's a deliberate strategy to erase Black agency, to silence the realities of racial oppression, and reframe America's founding as a pure and noble birth. And what do? They use the Arthurian tactic of false binaries. 1619 versus 1776. Trump is fixated on this. Just as the statement reveals, it's 1619 or it's 1776. Either you believe in America, the righteous, where the founders fought for freedom and every misstep was a temporary flaw on the road to greatness, or you are a radical, a woke revolutionary trying to destroy the country. This is just authoritarian manipulation. It's designed to force obedience to a state-approved narrative where patriotism is defined by submission to a falsified past, to a past that never existed. But history isn't a zero-sum game. The real question isn't whether 1619 or 1776 defines America. It's whether we are willing to tell the full story, one that includes both the ideals of the revolution and the character of the Revolutionary War and the brutal realities reflected by those ideals and that war, and its complexities. That means acknowledging that the founders knew slavery was wrong and chose to protect it. That for many Black Americans, the war for freedom wasn't fought on the side of the Patriots, and that the Constitution was built to protect the interests of white enslavers and their allies, not to create a democracy for all. So why does it matter? Because it's about power, not the past. Trump and his authoritarian movement are using state-controlled history as a weapon to shape the future. And the 1776 Commission is just all about justifying that authoritarianism. If the only acceptable version of history is one where America is righteous, then dissent becomes treasonous, because questioning the past means you hate America. Black history can only be acknowledged if it conforms to the narrative of white exceptionalism. Structural racism and inequality are denied because if America is inherently good, then today's injustices must be blamed on individuals, not on systems. And this is not just an academic debate. It's a political strategy designed to justify power. By distorting history, Trump's movement lays the groundwork for its anti-democratic agenda. If you control the past, you can control the future. And that's why the fight for honest history is a fight for democracy itself. It's why public historians and educators and anyone committed to the truth must expose these propaganda efforts for what they are. A calculated attempt to remake America's past to justify authoritarianism in the present. Because this isn't about 1619 versus 1776. It's about truth versus propaganda. And we know which side we're on.